A couple of days ago, Bitcoin hit a new all-time high, rising above $73,000. Yet it seems like the Bitcoin mining stocks continue to underperform and they're just less than desirable to own. In fact, I did the math. If we go back to November of 2022, a lot of you will remember that as a very dark time period. Bitcoin was trading at like $16,000. All of the Bitcoin mining stocks were penny stocks. We had bankruptcies happening. It was just a very dark time period. But if we go back to that dark time period and draw a line in the sand and look at Bitcoin's price performance since then and compare that to the price performance of the Bitcoin mining stocks since then, it paints the same exact picture. It's been less than desirable to own the Bitcoin mining stocks. In fact, I did the math. Only 4 out of the 20 publicly traded mining stocks that I track have outperformed Bitcoin's price performance since November of 2022. If you buy and hold Bitcoin mining companies, your goal is to at least outperform the performance of Bitcoin. Otherwise, it would just serve you better to buy and hold Bitcoin rather than the Bitcoin mining stocks. And the 4 that outperformed are TeraWulf, Cypher, IREN, and CleanSpark. CleanSpark is the only pure play Bitcoin mining company on this list, and that's important because the other 3 have all started HPC and AI businesses. So there's a very good chance that those 3 have outperformed the price of Bitcoin, not because of their exposure to Bitcoin, but rather because of their exposure to HPC and AI and all of the investors that are flooding into that space. And then outside of these 4 companies, the other 16 have underperformed Bitcoin by at least 40%, which is just miserable. And kind of to pour salt on the wounds of Bitcoin mining stock investors, we go and look at MicroStrategy, and since November of 2022, MicroStrategy stock is up more than 1,300%. It is kicking butt and taking names. And if you hold Bitcoin mining stocks, you've just kind of been stuck in the mud. And this is leading a lot of investors to come to the conclusion that Bitcoin mining stocks are dead forever. I'm never going to hold them again. Why would anybody buy them if I could just own MicroStrategy? And that's what we're going to be analyzing in today's video. Are Bitcoin mining stocks truly dead or not? Personally, spoiler alert, I think now is actually one of the best opportunities to buy Bitcoin mining stocks, and that's for several reasons that I'll discuss. But really quickly, if you are new here or returning and not yet subscribed, please subscribe down below. We have one of the fastest growing stock market YouTube channels on this platform, and I'd like to continue that. I'm a little biased, but on your way down there, hit the like button for me as well, and then leave me a comment if you own MicroStrategy or if you own Bitcoin mining stocks and what your viewpoint is on this. Anyways, the first thing we need to recognize, and this is going to save so many people a lot of headache, is that buying Bitcoin and buying MicroStrategy is an entirely different investment proposition than buying the Bitcoin mining stocks. That doesn't make sense at the surface level because you should make a lot of money if Bitcoin does well and you own Bitcoin mining stocks. But if we really think about the reasons somebody would buy Bitcoin or MicroStrategy and compare those to the reasons that somebody would buy Bitcoin mining stocks, you get 2 very different reasons. Owning and getting exposure to Bitcoin is a hedge against hyperinflation or the current monetary system failing. That's why you've seen a lot of countries and companies and billionaires buy Bitcoin, hold Bitcoin. They're hedging that risk. But if you buy Bitcoin mining stocks, it's generally because you're trying to chase excess returns on the rest of the market. You're not getting exposure to Bitcoin mining stocks to protect yourself from hyperinflation or the current monetary system failing. And the other aspect to this is you have countries all over the world right now that are accumulating both gold, which is part of the reason gold prices are at all-time highs, but also Bitcoin. They're looking for alternatives to holding their foreign exchange assets in United States dollars. Because what happened? Let's think back to when Russia invaded Ukraine. It's a horrible situation over there. The United States government decided to freeze Russia's foreign exchange reserves, and they even have proposed seizing the $300 billion plus that Russia holds in their foreign exchange reserves to defend and rebuild Ukraine. This is money that Russia no longer can touch because they've been sanctioned, and the United States of America has frozen those assets. And we've talked about seizing those assets. So it's no wonder that countries all over the world, especially if they're more our enemies than our friends, they're searching for alternatives to the United States dollar. They're searching for alternatives to hold their foreign exchange assets in. One of those alternatives is Bitcoin, and one of those alternatives is gold. You're getting a lot of buying pressure coming into Bitcoin because of that. And none of that buying pressure comes into the Bitcoin mining stock. So those are the two different reasons that you would buy Bitcoin versus why you'd buy Bitcoin mining stocks. One is a hedge against hyperinflation, the monetary system failing, and even a hedge against United States economic sanctions. The other is simply, oh, I'm going to buy this because I want to chase excess return and I want to beat the markets. Another way to say this is, sure, Bitcoin's price action follows the risk appetite of investors somewhat, but as time goes on and Bitcoin matures and more people get exposure, it starts to turn away from being simply a risk asset to actually being a hedge against, again, that hyperinflation, economic sanctions, etc. But the Bitcoin mining stocks, because it's simply investors chasing excess return, the Bitcoin mining stocks will only outperform in time periods where risk appetite of investors is peaking and is nearing all-time highs. So I personally have come to the conclusion that Bitcoin mining stocks will track the risk appetite of investors more than they'll actually track the price of Bitcoin. And I can prove this to you. If we go to the 1-year chart of the Valkyrie Bitcoin Miners ETF, we can see that on balance, the Bitcoin mining stocks have risen 122%. This is lagging Bitcoin's price performance. But when we think of this from the risk appetite standpoint, this makes a lot of sense. Risk appetite of investors has increased over the past year as all of a sudden investors have started to think about the Federal Reserve cutting interest rates, which naturally increases the risk appetite of investors. So over the last year or so, Bitcoin mining stocks have done okay. However, the reason they haven't seen outsized returns is because there's still been a lot of concern in the system. We've had wars, we've had inflation, we've had a brand new presidential candidate thrown into the race just in the snap of a fingers. There are so many catalysts that have happened that have kind of hampered the excess return that you would expect to see by owning Bitcoin mining stocks. So risk appetite has gone up on balance, but there still have been risks in the system that have really prevented the cap from blowing off the bottle, if that makes any sense. And then let's look at what's happened just over the past 5 days. This ETF is down 6% despite the price of Bitcoin rising. Why would this be? Well, it's because over the past 5, 6, 7 days, the risk appetite of investors has actually fallen because all of a sudden we have an election knocking on our door. And despite the Fed cutting interest rates by 50 basis points to loosen lending conditions, the markets have responded and punched back at the Fed, where the 10-year Treasury yield has actually gone up 50 basis points since the Fed cut interest rates. So lending conditions have actually tightened rather than loosened as a result of the Federal Reserve cutting interest rates. That sounds bass-ackwards, but that's what's happening right now because the markets are starting to realize maybe the 50 basis point rate cut wasn't the best idea. And maybe no matter who's president, the federal budget deficit is going to widen. And well, if the Federal Reserve wants to stimulate a hot economy, we're going to have inflation. We have all these union strikes going on right now, which leads to wage inflation. The Treasury Department is borrowing at short-term rates to buy back long-term debt to hold long-term interest rates lower. That's stimulative and inflationary to the economy. I put out a tweet that shows this. Right here. I mean, paragraph after paragraph after paragraph telling you why I think right now you absolutely need exposure to Bitcoin and stocks immediately. Otherwise, you're going to be left behind. So go to my X or my Twitter page to look through this post. I'm not going to talk through all this in today's video, but you kind of get the point. Interest rates have actually risen since the Federal Reserve cut interest rates. It's crazy stuff, but that decreases the risk appetite of investors. So we can see this over the long term. Yes, risk appetite has inched higher over the past year. As a result, the Bitcoin mining stocks have performed pretty well, over 100% return over the last year. Hard to complain about, but it's underperformed Bitcoin for a variety of reasons that I've mentioned. And then over the past 5 or 6 days, as different events have led risk appetite of investors to decline, the Bitcoin mining stocks they've fallen. They've felt pain despite the price of Bitcoin going to all-time highs. But when we think about all of the stimulus coming into the economy and into the system, I've personally been on record saying I don't think the risk as investors anymore is recession. I think the risk is actually the Federal Reserve no longer being able to tap the brake pedal on the economy without sending interest rates to double-digit percentages at a minimum. And that's for a lot of structural shifts that have occurred. But I think the risk is the Federal Reserve throwing stimulus at the system when we don't need the extra push at our back. Basically, the Federal Reserve misidentifying a crisis and feeding this hyperinflationary snowball, and eventually things will crack. But as I was saying, when we think about all of the stimulus coming into the system, and I posted baby boomers are retiring with a record $78 trillion of net worth with an itch to spend it, things like that, you have to question, if you're investing in Bitcoin mining stocks, you shouldn't really be thinking about where the price of Bitcoin is going to go as much as you should be thinking about where is risk appetite of investors going to go. Because if risk appetite grows, the price of Bitcoin is going to take care of itself right alongside the other reasons that people would buy Bitcoin, the hedge against inflation, the hedge against economic sanctions, etc. In my personal opinion, it's fairly obvious where risk appetite is going to go. I think it's going to go through the roof with all of this stimulus coming into a hot economy. And as a result of that, it might be painful right now, but I want to get exposure to Bitcoin mining stocks. I want to get exposure to the small cap stocks. I want to get exposure to the more risky plays, because I think that's going to be the next trend of the stock market. You see, if you're just a part of the flock that goes to what's popular, let's say you're chasing the AI craze right now, or you have in the past, buying NVIDIA, over time, you're only going to match the performance of the markets, and you probably will underperform the performance of the markets. The way you truly beat the markets is being early to the trend, being early to what you think the next popular trend will be. And that takes an immense amount of patience. You might be called silly or dumb or stupid in the process, but you get to flex your returns when it's all said and done if you're correct about your thesis. Now, I know some of you are going to argue, well, how do you know risk appetite isn't already high right now? Well, the reason I know that is because we can look at the price of gold. The price of gold is at an all-time high. If investors were truly feeling risky or willing to take risk, you wouldn't have all of this money parked in gold. You wouldn't have all of this money parked in money market mutual funds. Over $6 trillion sitting in money market mutual funds, earning risk-free return. And also, you wouldn't have the small cap index, Russell 2000, sitting 10% below all-time highs if investors were risk on right now. Now, let's go back to MicroStrategy and discuss this. Outside of the ETFs, MicroStrategy is the purest play on Bitcoin you can get. The bottom line is a lot of the Bitcoin mining stocks have alternative business lines right now, alternative business models and businesses they're chasing after, whether that's HPC and AI or if they're selling hardware and firmware, whatever it is, they are really not a pure play on Bitcoin outside of CleanSpark, in my personal opinion. A lot of people will question, if MicroStrategy returns 1,300% since November of 2022, why wouldn't I just buy MicroStrategy? Well, again, this gets back to that comment I made about being a part of the flock and flocking to what's popular, what's hot. Chances are long-term you're going to underperform the markets if you think that way. But when we think about this on a more fundamental basis or with a fundamental backing, what advantage do Bitcoin mining companies have on MicroStrategy? Well, if we think about it, MicroStrategy, they're forced to buy Bitcoin at the spot price. They don't mine Bitcoin. They buy Bitcoin at the market price. So right now, if they wanted to buy more Bitcoin, which they are doing, they would have to purchase Bitcoin for $70,000. And as the price of Bitcoin appreciates and they buy more and more Bitcoin, their average cost per coin also increases. The Bitcoin miners, on the other hand, can mine Bitcoin for a 50% discount to market prices, depending on the company you look at. The most efficient Bitcoin mining companies right now can mine Bitcoin for about $35,000 per coin. And this is a relatively fixed cost. It can go up slightly as the difficulty to mine Bitcoin increases, but that gets a little bit nerdy. For the most part, this is a fixed cost to acquire Bitcoin. And that also means that as the price of Bitcoin appreciates, the cost to get exposure to that Bitcoin or acquire that Bitcoin stays the same for the Bitcoin mining companies. That's where you get that leverage, where let's talk about CleanSpark. They mine Bitcoin for, let's say, $30,000 per coin, and immediately they can turn around and sell that coin for $70,000. Well, if the price of Bitcoin appreciates to $100,000, they're still going to be mining Bitcoin in that $30,000, $35,000 range, but all of a sudden now they can sell it for $100,000 per coin. And that, again, they can acquire Bitcoin at a fixed cost, at a way cheaper cost to that of the market price. Whereas for MicroStrategy, again, their cost per coin rises as the price of Bitcoin appreciates. You also have the facilities and the mining rigs that the Bitcoin mining companies own that will appreciate in value as Bitcoin appreciates. That's something that MicroStrategy doesn't have. But again, the time period where Bitcoin mining stocks give you that excess return is during time periods where risk appetite of investors is at all-time highs. And we're nowhere close to that point right now. But I personally believe that in 2025, we will approach those levels of euphoria. I think the euphoria of the 2021 bull market could look small by comparison. And if that's the case, owning Bitcoin mining stocks is going to give you tremendous return. Now, it takes patience, and that's the missing piece to the puzzle that people miss quite often. They don't have the patience. They're tracking, well, today my Bitcoin mining stocks are down and the price of Bitcoin is up. These things are dead. No, you can't think that way. You got to think more long-term about where risk appetite is going to go. And if you agree with me that risk appetite is only going to increase from here, just sit back, relax, have patience. You don't need to check the price of your stocks every single day of the week if you know what the long-term trend is going to be. Now, if you want my opinion on the best Bitcoin mining stock to own, I've held this opinion forever, and people used to give me so much grief for this. CleanSpark has been my only exposure to the Bitcoin mining space for the last 3 or 4 years, and people have said I'm stupid not to diversify. But again, let's go back to that post I had on Twitter. Well, who's the only pure play Bitcoin mining stock that's outperforming Bitcoin since November of 2022? It's CleanSpark. So this speaks to, if you know what you're doing, you know what you're looking for in this space, diversification it's silly. But on October 9th, I put out a video, and this makes me look really smart. I put out a video saying now is the time to start buying CleanSpark stock again. I had gone quiet on CleanSpark since June-ish, and that worked out in a big way. And I said on October 9th, I thought that now is the time to start buying CleanSpark stock. And ever since then, it's up 20.5%, which is outperforming Bitcoin over that same time period. So the things that I saw with CleanSpark, this is kind of fun. In September of 2022, I posted this on Twitter. Shout out to you if you've been part of this channel for that long. That's incredible if you have been. I posted a small list of things that CleanSpark is doing. Giving employees raises when most companies are reducing pay or decreasing hours. They were hiring when most companies were cutting jobs. They were expanding when most companies were shedding. And they were acquiring when most companies were selling. Those 4 things told me that if Bitcoin succeeds, CleanSpark is going to perform the best out of any other miner in the space, because no other company in the space was doing those 4 things. And people were calling me, they were calling the company, they were calling the company's executives stupid, dumb, illiterate. But in the end, again, who gets to flex their gains? It was the people that were early to the trend and identified this. The people that weren't a part of the flock. The people that thought differently, thought in the contrarian mindset, are the ones that benefited most, and I don't think that's going to change. The other 2 things that I've said ever since I started talking about CleanSpark on my YouTube channel is the 2 E's, execution and efficiency. You will not find a management team that is better at those two things in the entire Bitcoin mining space. CleanSpark also has little to no debt, and it's hard to go bankrupt if you don't owe anybody money, right? I mean, that's just simple economics, simple budgeting. That's another aspect of CleanSpark that I really admire. A lot of the other companies in the space have a lot of debt on their balance sheet. And then the last note I'll make is just that ever since CleanSpark got into Bitcoin mining, they've been the only company, I would say, that has shown investors the ability to accretively dilute them. In the Bitcoin mining space, it's very capital intensive. Just to get started, you have to spend hundreds of millions of dollars. And to stay competitive, you have to keep spending hundreds of millions of dollars. If you hold on to the Bitcoin you mine, it's one of the only industries where you don't sell what you produce. So you have to come up with cash somewhere else. And it comes from shareholders. They dilute shareholders in this space. But CleanSpark has done a good job of using that dilution to grow the business in a way that adds more value per share of stock that you own than dilution takes away per share of stock that you own. That's what's called accretive dilution. CleanSpark has done the best at that. They've proven they can continue to do this, and that's why I have the utmost confidence in them. On the screen now is evidence that I am not just blowing smoke. Ever since October 30th of 2023, my portfolio is up 170% versus the NASDAQ being up 45%. So we continue to outperform the markets. If you've been a part of this YouTube channel since late 2022, you would know that we have been kicking the market's butt. If this chart went back to October of 2022, it would just look stupid. I do share all of my thoughts and ideas and investments I'm making, economic analysis, company analysis for my paid monthly members. I'm entirely independent and self-funded, so your support means a lot to me. Just thank you so much for watching this video this long into the video. But if you want to take that extra step, it means a lot to me. Showing me that monthly support. It's no requirement, but if you're interested in checking out the perks and potentially joining, hit the join button located right next to the subscribe button, or hit the Patreon link in the pinned comment. And if you don't get value from my membership, I have a 100% refund policy, and I have yet to have to refund anybody. So let that speak for itself. Just relax if you own Bitcoin mining stocks. Things are going to work out okay. Quit looking at the day-to-day price action, minute-to-minute price action, because it's meaningless. If you believe, like I do, that all this stimulus coming into a hot economy is just going to result in an overheating economy, a bubble, a market melt-up, risk appetite increasing from investors, you're going to do fine over time. And just trust in that trend. Trust in your research. Trust in your own understanding. And kind of ignore the noise. Ignore the flock. If people are telling you that this investment is a dead one, chances are it's not going to be dead. And chances are those people are the people that, when Bitcoin mining stocks get hot again, guess who's going to flock to it? It's those people that have been bashing it. With that, I hope this video gives you some extra confidence. Have a happy Halloween. Have a blessed weekend. Stay blessed. Keep 10 toes granted in your chin up. Peace out.